So today we are going to discuss regarding the neural models, basically the biological neuron. As I said in the last sessions that the basic difference between the human being and other mammals are concerned. So we are having the concept called as cognition present at our mind. So this cognition is going to have the concept of perception. So whatever that we see or that we view, that will be recorded in our brain. So human brain has the capability of dealing with multiple sort of neurons. So the concept of biological neurons is that how this biological neuron is going to work accordingly. So it's a sort of network that is formed with the set of neurons. Along with the set of neurons, these neurons have the concept called as activation. So whenever you are going to see a small image, you can see that this particular image belongs to this. Suppose we are having 1, 2, 3. Based on the writing, we can recognize that this is 1, this is 2, this is 3. So how can we recognize that? Based on some certain sort of patterns. So like these patterns are available at neurons, and all these neurons are going to perceive all the images as well as videos and other things as well that are stored in the human brain. So this is the aspect of biological neuron. So every neuron has some unique features which are used for some special purposes. There are some sort of structures. So the main thing is that neuron are called as dendrites. So every neuron have some dendrites which are going to form some large tracts, and these are going to give with some activations that is called as soma. So in the particular body, as I said, there is some activation function, right? So that activation function is called as soma. So when we look at this, so we are having some cells that are combined together, and they are going to form an actions which are going to give some activations or activation functions between the human brain. So to see or view the images or to understand and identify the situations, these soma and the all the neurons are going to play an important role. So all the dendrites are going to play an important role. With the help of dendrites, all the sort of communication is going to take place. All the dendrites are collaborated with each other in the form of a network, and each neuron in the dendrite have some nucleus. Along with the neuron, they are going to communicate with each other in the form of network, and they are going to act according to the situations. So these neurons in the network having some perceptions, and based on the perceptions, all the neurons are going to act accordingly. So this is the current synergy as far as neural networking structure is concerned. So our concept is that we are going to simulate the biological neuron in the brain, so that we are going to name it as artificial neuron or artificial neural network. So this artificial neural network is going to play an important role. So this artificial neuron is composed of various weighted inputs. As I said, in the biological neuron, we are having the dendrites. So these dendrites are going to store. But what in the case of artificial neural networks, we need to train each and every input and output. We need to get the output based on the inputs. And we need to transform all the inputs such that these inputs can take the data from the outside world so that they can recognize themselves and act accordingly. So for this transformation, we are having a function called as activation function. So this activation function is going to play an important role. As I said, there is one action in the biological neuron which is going to have the all the cognition that is available in the human brain. So that aspect is present in this activation function. So this activation function is going to play an important role as far as artificial neural network is concerned. So we are giving some weighted inputs. Based on the weighted inputs, we are getting some outputs. These outputs can be generated with the help of activation function. So we are going to take some electrical impulses. So generally in the biological neuron, this can be done biologically in the human body. But whereas in the case of artificial neural network, the brain simulation should be done, which is the critical task. Suppose I am talking and you are listening. Some people are not listening in the class. Let us just consider. Some people are not active in the class, or some people are unable to join the class, or some people are at remote location who do not have the internet, cannot join the class. There are several clusters or classifications as far as this class is concerned. So we need to regenerate in such a way that the biological neuron that is present, it can predict that these people are going to take the class, take some inputs from this class, and generate the outputs according to the circumstances. Some people are active, who are active in this particular session. Those can be treated as the biological aids or the biological prospects, such as dendrites, as far as biological neuron is concerned. Now coming to the artificial neural network, based on the boundaries, like if there are 26 people in this particular class, we need to elaborate and encapsulate all the people who are present in the class and who may be present later on in the class. So that is the perception. Based on the 27 students activity, we need to recognize and predict the upcoming 48 students activity. So this is the major calculation. We have 27 students, and based on the 27 students inputs, we need to generate the 48 students outputs. So that is the major challenging task as far as neural network is concerned. So this neural network is going to play an important role as far as artificial neural is concerned. So artificial neurons are going to play an important role as far as neural networks is concerned. So they are going to think more like humans. Whatever the humans are going to percept and intercept, all the characteristics should be present in the artificial neural network. So these are some inputs. There are some inputs and there are some weights. Based on the weights, the input is going to transmit it to a transfer function. So this transfer function is going to take the input, is going to send with the help of activation function, and the function is going to activate it. So normally in the biological neural network, what is present is that we are having some dendrites which are connected with neurons, and these neurons are going to communicate it with the help of activation function. So with the help of threshold value, there is some activation that takes place in the threshold value. We call it as a soma. This activation function as a soma in the biological neural network. So whereas coming to the artificial neural network, we are going to transmit all the inputs along with the weights. So there are certain changes in the inputs. There will be certain changes in the weights. Based on this transfer function need to predict that what are the changes that takes place, because it is dealing with the interception or the perception. So this perception is going to vary. So if we see the figure 1, it looks with the pattern like 1. If we see the figure 2, the pattern is going to get changed. So inputs are going to get changed accordingly. If we see the value as 3, this value or this particular pattern is changed when compared to 1 and 2. So what we need is that we need to predict each and every value. So that is the key challenging task as far as artificial neural network is concerned. So whenever we are going to take certain sort of conclusions as far as artificial neural network is concerned, we need to take the criteria of activation function along with the threshold value. These two are going to play an important role. As the inputs are changing and weights are changing, transfer function should be changed accordingly with the help of inputs and outputs, and the activation function should be activated along with the transfer function notation. So that is the major challenging task. So we are having some simulated inputs which are going to change accordingly. Based on the simulated inputs, we are going to make the outputs. Suppose there is some fire accident that occurs in the nearby area. So based on the fire, human being is going to recognize that this is fire. Now we consider any sort of things like artificial neural network. When we consider this, a robot, it is going to predict that there is fire. It should predict that there is fire. So the pattern of the fire or the image of the fire or the simulation of the fire should be generated with the robot. so that the fire can be estimated, or the pattern of the fire can be estimated, and it can be act accordingly based on the pattern recognition. So that is the major thing. So it may be in the sort of video, it may be in the sort of audio, it may be in the sort of some input like the generation of the image. So it may be the multimedia aspect that takes place. That should be trained as an input to the neural network, so that it will understand that this is going to happen in future accordingly and act accordingly. So that is the main thing. As I said, there are some weighted functions. So these weighted functions are going to calculate all the inputs. When the weights are changed and the inputs are changed, all the inputs and the weights should be adopted according to the scenarios of the situations. So each input will be given a relative weight, which is going to affect the ultimate sort of input. And these weights are adapted to in such a way that inputs are going to get changed, weights are going to get changed. So based on the intensity of the signal or the pattern that is generated, based on that, it is going to act accordingly. So that is the current synergy as far as activation function is concerned, or weighted function is concerned. So this weighted function is named as based on the weights. So W1, X1, weight along with the weights, along with the inputs, W2, X2, and Wn, Xn. Like that, we are going to calculate along with the, as I said, we are having the transfer function. Along with that, we are going to add the transfer function along with the weights. So now coming to the activation function, this is called as one sort of transfer function. So the thing that we deserve is that we generally react with the stimulus. So we are having an aspect called as simulation or the stimulus. So suppose you are going to touch a fire, suddenly you will remove the hand. Who say you to remove the hand? So that is the major question. Your stimulus is going to say that there is some danger and you need to act according to the situation. So that is the transfer function that we are going to act accordingly in the neural networks. So this sort of simulation should be given to the human brain, is adaptive in the human brain, but that should be regenerated in the neural network. So that is the key challenge. So activation function, it is going to decide whether a neuron should be activated or not. A neuron can be, a neural network can be activated based on the stimulus and the generation. So we need to have some sort of trials before we go ahead with the adaptive regression as far as this concept is concerned. So how the neuron is going to act according to the stimulus, or the simulation that is generated, which is going to transmit the neural network with the help of weights and bias. So that should be calculated or inculcated. So if there is any error that occurs while propagating the data or while sending the data from one input to the other input, there is some error that should be overcome. So that principle that overcome the errors, that we call it as back propagation. So here we are having a concept called as back propagation to eradicate the errors and to overcome the errors. Based on the errors rates, the activation function is going to mold accordingly. So this is the current synergy of activation function. So it is going to make the back propagation possible, since there are some gradients that are supplied with the error rates with the weights and bias. Okay, so we are having some sort of mathematical models and some sort of linear functions that are available as far as these activation functions are concerned. All these are coming under the change of the weights. Primary thing that you need to observe before we discuss regarding the neural networks is that how this simulation is possible and what makes the simulation. So if the simulation is going to generate more amount of error propagation, the neural network will obviously fail. And the address transmission is also possible only with the help of all the networking that is present. So there is some hidden layers. There are some layers present over here and all the layers should be transmitted, should be identified with that particular patterns are concerned. So that is the key challenging task as far as neural network is concerned. So as I said, we need to have good idea regarding the propagation of the data as far as activation function and other things are concerned. We need to focus much on the activation function because it is the key area of the neural network. Without the activation function, we cannot estimate the neural network because it is not adaptive inform. Activation function is adaptive inform that makes the other systems to regenerate and revamp. So this is the current synergy as far as neural network is concerned. Okay. So stopping the recording.